Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, today we're jumping into something, well, it's a real mind bender, this core paradox. What you seek is seeking you, but what seeks is what you already are. It comes from this source, the paradox of becoming, which is definitely an unconventional guide to spiritual awakening. It really turns the whole idea of a spiritual journey on its head.
It really does.
Yeah, it argues the destination isn't somewhere else you have to get to. It's right here. It's the starting point.
Exactly. And that's our mission for this deep dive, really, to unpack how this guide just reframes, well, everything. Spiritual growth, ego, reality, even death.
Right.
We're aiming for those, those aha moments, those surprising insights. Hopefully it gives you a kind of shortcut to understanding these complex ideas, navigating what it calls the pathless path.
Okay, let's get right into that central idea then, because it's a big one. The guide kicks off saying the biggest illusion in spirituality is thinking there's somewhere to go or something to achieve. It says you already are what you seek. But, I mean, for most of us, growth feels like a journey, right? Like we are moving towards something.
Yeah.
How does it tackle that?
Well, that's precisely what it calls the seeker's paradox. It argues the very act of seeking, of looking for enlightenment, actually reinforces the feeling of being separate from it.
Okay.
Yeah, like every practice or technique you pick up kind of whispers, it's not here yet, it's somewhere else, sometime else, maybe for someone else. Oh. So this pathless path isn't about finding a new technique or trying harder. It's about just recognizing that the seeker and what's being sought aren't actually two separate things. It's like one continuous movement of consciousness checking itself out. It's about spotting the unity that's already here right now in just ordinary experience.
And it gets even more, maybe uncomfortable when it talks about the ego, specifically the spiritual ego.
Right.
It points out how insidious it is. Like that doesn't just vanish. It just changes its clothes, starts collecting spiritual experiences, building this identity around being awakened or evolved.
Yeah, it's really quite cunning.
So how do we spot that in ourselves if it's just changing costumes?
Well, the book suggests it's often sneakier than the regular ego because it pretends to be selfless, but it's still all about me. It sets up these hierarchies. The awakened folk over here, the asleep ones over there. It tries to be special through ordinariness or important through being humble.
Like humble bragging about meditation retreats.
Exactly like that. Posting the picture, making sure everyone sees how spiritual and humble you are. The source calls it the uncomfortable truth that sometimes wanting to be spiritual is just a really sophisticated form of narcissism.
Wow. Okay, that's sharp.
Yeah.
Then it pivots to this idea of the mirror of projection, the idea that everything you see out there is just consciousness appearing as form. It brings in that Meister Eckhart quote, the eye through which I see God is the same eye through which God sees me. Can you break that down a bit? What does that mean day to day?
It means it's not just some lofty philosophy. The guide argues it's the most direct and immediate fact of experience. Our mind creates this story separation. Right? How we project qualities onto things, people, situations, not realizing that our own consciousness is the source of all that perceiving.
So even spiritual experiences.
Even those, no matter how amazing or profound, they arise and then they fade away in awareness. They aren't enlightenment itself. They're just movements within enlightenment.
Okay.
Consciousness itself, the guide says, never awakens or falls asleep. It's just the unchanging space where everything happens.
So there's nowhere to get to, nothing to achieve because we're already it.
Yeah.
What do we do? What's the practical takeaway? It almost sounds like, well, like just giving up.
It can sound that way initially, yeah. But the guide offers what it calls the practice of no practice.
Okay.
It's simply this. Right now, without trying to change a thing, just notice that you are aware. You don't have to try to be aware, you just are. Don't look for some special feeling or state, that ordinary, everyday awareness. That's it. It's just recognizing what's always here. The awareness of these words, your breath, this moment.
Right.
And that recognition, it says, is both the path and the goal. It collapses the whole seeking game.
Okay, so if just being aware is the pathless path, what about death? That seems like the ultimate opposite of awareness, maybe. The guide has some pretty provocative stuff on this too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It says death isn't life's opposite, but its deepest teaching. Giving us chances to die to our stories, our needs, our need for control.
Yes, and it really clarifies ego death. It's not about this big, dramatic destruction people sometimes chase.
Right.
It's more about seeing through the ego, recognizing it as a necessary fiction, maybe, a useful illusion for navigating the world, but not ultimately real.
So not killing it, but seeing it wasn't really solid in the first place.
Exactly. And this death is also a birth, the birth of realizing your true nature as just boundless awareness and that dark night of the soul people talk about. According to this source, that's often just the ego trying desperately to hang on. It creates drama, despair, self-pity, reinforcing its own existence through suffering.
Huh. And then it talks about meeting your inner corpses, like past versions of ourselves. The kid who believed Santa was real, the teenager who thought they knew everything.
Yeah, those old identities that kind of haunt us. The idea isn't to bring them back to life, but to, well, the guide calls it advanced spiritual work. It involves consciously connecting with them, honoring them, learning from them, and seeing that what you thought died was just a form. The essence, the awareness, continues.
So death becomes transformation, not just ending.
Precisely. It even touches on the seduction of annihilation, how some people seem drawn to just nothingness. But the book argues that's not real surrender. It's more like the ego hating itself, wanting oblivion. True spiritual death, it says, dissolves the false but keeps the essence.
So after each death, there's a resurrection, but you come back different.
Exactly. More authentic. Not the person you were trying hard to be, but what you naturally are underneath all that effort. The guide says this resurrected self is both empty and full. Empty of the fake identity, but full of genuine presence. It even suggests a daily death practice.
Oh yeah, what's that?
Each night before sleep, consciously die to the day, review who you were, what happened, successes, failures, then just let it all go. Let that person pass away. Notice what remains when you wake up. It's practice for the big one.
That's quite a practice. Okay, this leads naturally into the shadow stuff. The guide really flips the script here, too, saying the shadow is not evil to be eliminated, but raw power to be integrated.
Absolutely. It argues that ignoring the shadow, pushing it down, creates these, well, split personalities, people putting on these angelic facades while hiding demonic depths.
Right.
It introduces sacred darkness, thinking of divinity's destructive side, like a controlled burn in a forest. Looks destructive, sure, but it clears out the old dead stuff so new life can grow. It's not evil, just a powerful and necessary force.
And that uncomfortable truth about shadow projection. Basically, what we hate in others is often our own stuff we haven't owned.
Yes, exactly. The source points out that the politician you despise, the celebrity you judge, they might be carrying aspects of yourself you refuse to see. Reclaiming those projections. Painful, it says, but incredibly freeing.
Okay.
It also talks about sacred rage and holy destruction. Anger not as some unspiritual flaw, but as fierce love, maybe for justice, or setting boundaries, or just clearing out dysfunction.
Like those wrathful deities in Tibetan Buddhism.
Precisely. Their scary forms aren't literal demons. They represent our own mind's projections, our fears. They teach that even the scariest stuff is ultimately empty. It mentions Dark Night warriors, people who really integrated their shadow, and even sacred transgression.
Oh, that sounds risky.
Extremely. The guide gives a huge warning here. Sacred transgression means intentionally breaking rules, societal, spiritual, to gain insight. But it's so easy to misuse that, to just justify bad behavior if you don't have incredible wisdom and guidance.
Yeah, I can see that.
But it reminds us of the shadow's gifts, too. What you reject most fiercely in yourself often holds your greatest creative energy.
So how do you walk that line, transcending good and evil without just becoming unethical or nihilistic?
Well, the guide clarifies it's about seeing beyond more labels as the ultimate truth, but still using practical discrimination. Understanding what's helpful versus harmful based on the effects on everyone, on the whole system.
Okay.
It's not a free pass for bad behavior. It's recognizing consciousness itself is beyond morality, but its expressions in the world need ethical consideration. It suggests a shadow dialogue practice for this.
How does that work?
You pick someone who really pushes your buttons, write a dialogue from your perspective, laying it all out. Then switch roles. Argue from their perspective. Really try to inhabit it. It helps reveal those disowned parts of yourself.
Interesting. Okay, let's shift gears dramatically now. The physics of consciousness. The guy just lays it out. Reality is not made of matter that somehow produces consciousness, but consciousness that appears as matter.
Well, yeah, it's a total reversal of the usual assumption.
So if reality is information, does that mean our consciousness can actually, change it? Or at least change how we experience it?
That's exactly the implication. And it argues this isn't just woo-woo stuff, but actually aligns with findings in quantum mechanics. It tackles the famous observer problem in physics.
Right, where observing changes the outcome.
Yeah. The guide says the true observer isn't just the scientist's brain or instruments, it's consciousness itself prior to all observation. So you're not creating reality separately. It's more like reality is creating itself through you.
Okay.
It highlights this hidden knowledge, the idea that cutting-edge physics is starting to sound a lot like what mystics have said forever. Reality is fundamentally information, not stuff. Our individual minds are like localized nodes in this universal information field.
And then the holographic principle, each part contains the whole. That sounds like it could explain weird stuff like telepathy or synchronicities.
Exactly. If consciousness is holographic, then accessing distant information isn't really distant. It's potentially available right here in your own local experience because the whole pattern is everywhere.
Wow.
It dissolves that feeling of separation, me here, you there. It talks about consciousness as energy field, saying your awareness isn't locked inside your skull. It extends infinitely, mingling with everything.
And fractal reality architecture.
Yeah, that's the idea that the same basic patterns repeat at every single scale, from the tiniest quantum fluctuation up to cosmic structures, because it's all consciousness projecting itself, using the same blueprints over and over, one huge process appearing as countless individual bits.
So how do we, feel this? Get a direct sense of it.
It offers a consciousness field meditation, but basically you sit quietly and just notice awareness itself, not what you're aware of, but the simple fact that you are aware. Then gently let that sense of awareness expand. Feel it filling the room, the building, the city, the planet, the whole cosmos. The key insight is noticing that awareness doesn't actually move or expand. You just recognize its already infinite nature. That boundless space, the guide says, is your actual size.
Okay, heavy stuff. Next up is, it's a sensitive one, but important. Sacred plants and chemical gnosis.
The guide calls psychedelics ancient tools, not just recreational drugs.
Yes, but it immediately follows that with a huge integration warning. This is critical.
Right.
It stresses that just having a wild psychedelic trip without integrating it properly can actually be harmful. It can inflate the ego, make you feel disconnected. The real work, it insists, starts after the substance wears off.
Embodying the insights.
Exactly. And it lists the serious risks triggering mental health issues, lingering perceptual changes, legal trouble. It urges massive research and professional guidance if you even consider this path. It's very clear. This info is purely educational. Got it. What about the different substances it mentions? Psilocybin, LSD, DMT, 5-MeO-DMT, these pharmacological keys?
Each one, it explains, tends to open different doors. Psilocybin often dissolves boundaries, reveals how interconnected things are. LSD can speed up mental processing. DMT, while that often involves contact with what feels like non-human intelligence. And 5-MeO-DMT can bring about complete ego dissolution, a sense of pure unity. But again, the emphasis is these are powerful shamanic tools demanding respect, intention, and a serious commitment to integration, not party favors.
Right.
They seem to create profound neuroplasticity, making the brain more flexible, able to form new connections. That's why they can help break old rigid patterns. But that window of flexibility is when the integration work, meditation, therapy, journaling is crucial. It even mentions advanced integration, like highly skilled practitioners working with scientific care.
It also notes how people on high doses across cultures often report similar core insights, linking it to the perennial philosophy. So it's not just random hallucinations.
That's the argument. This perspective sees it as evidence that people are accessing objective features of consciousness itself, validating core mystical teachings regardless of cultural background. But, again, that comes with a responsibility to live those insights ethically.
Makes sense.
And importantly, it also offers ways for integration without substances, things like specific breathwork techniques or deep meditation practices designed to cultivate similar brain states and access those insights naturally over time.
Okay. Moving on. The guide talks about hierarchical levels of consciousness.
Yeah.
It's careful to say this isn't about judging people's worth, but about developmental complexity.
Yes. It outlines 5 broad levels. First is survival consciousness, basic, instinctual, driven by fear and biological needs, pretty much where animals operate and parts of our own brain.
Right.
Then emotional mental consciousness. This is where personal identity forms, logic, reason. The foundation of modern society, really.
Okay.
Level 3 is vision logic consciousness. Seeing systems, integrating multiple viewpoints, understanding complexity and patterns. Then you get into transpersonal consciousness. This involves direct experiences of consciousness as fundamental. Mystical insights might start popping up spontaneously.
On the top level.
Non-dual awareness. This isn't a temporary state, but the stable recognition that awareness and everything appearing in it are not separate. Ordinary reality reveals itself as already enlightened. There's no you separate from it.
But what about the downsides? Spiritual ego, getting detached? It mentions an elite consciousness controversy.
Yeah, the guide warns that every level has its own shadows and potential pitfalls. Getting higher doesn't mean problems disappear, they just get more subtle.
Right.
Transpersonal states can lead to thinking you're special. That's spiritual narcissism. And non-dual understanding can sometimes curdle into a kind of cold detachment if it's not integrated with compassion. The key thing it stresses is evolution continues infinitely. There is no final arrival.
No finish line.
Nope. The elite consciousness controversy refers to the valid concern about these models being used to create spiritual hierarchies or justify elitism. The guide acknowledges developmental differences are real, but insists the potential for awakening is inherent in everyone. It uses spiral dynamics of spirit to show development isn't just a straight line up. It's more like a spiral, constantly revisiting and integrating earlier stages at deeper levels. You could have a profound non-dual insight 1 minute and be dealing with basic childhood patterns the next.
Huh.
It offers a level assessment practice, basically. Honestly, looking at which level you tend to operate from in different areas of your life, like work, relationships, spirituality, helps keep you grounded and avoid getting puffed up.
Okay. Now for another potentially tricky one. Sexual energy and sacred sexuality. Framing sexual energy as life force in its most concentrated form.
Yeah, this perspective sees it as the raw creative power of the universe showing up in us as sexual desire, something often really suppressed or misunderstood in spiritual circles.
Right.
It talks about the tantric revolution, basically, using all of life, including sexuality, as fuel for spiritual practice, recognizing that enlightenment has to include the body, the senses, everything.
But it sounds like it comes with warnings, too.
Oh, big time. It says Tantra is extraordinarily dangerous because whatever level of consciousness you're at, Tantra amplifies it. If you're full of ego and confusion, it'll just amplify that. It briefly mentions sexual energy circulation practices too.
And sacred union beyond personal love. What's that about?
It describes going way beyond typical romance. In moments of deep tantric connection, it says, two individuals can kind of dissolve into one awareness knowing itself as love.
Wow.
But that requires total vulnerability, a deep letting go of the ego, which frankly terrifies most people. And again, sacred sexuality warnings are crucial potential for psychological harm, blowing up relationships, the absolute need for maturity, strong boundaries, and ethical clarity, not something to play around with lightly.
Definitely not. It even tackles celibacy as sexual mastery, which seems counterintuitive. Isn't celibacy usually seen as suppression?
That's the common view, yeah. But true celibacy, according to this guide, isn't about clamping down on sexual energy out of fear or disgust. It's a conscious redirection of that powerful life force towards spiritual growth. When that energy is transformed instead of just expressed or repressed, it becomes incredibly potent fuel for evolving consciousness. But it warns, most attempts are just repression. Real conscious celibacy comes from a place of fullness, of abundance rather than scarcity. Choosing to redirect from a place of mastery, not feeling inadequate, it suggests a sexual energy awareness practice. Next time you feel aroused, instead of immediately acting on it or pushing it away, just feel the energy itself. Where is it in your body? What's its quality? How does your breath change? Just get sensitive to this fundamental force without judgment.
Interesting. Okay. Almost nearing the end of the path, we hit the final taboo, death preparation. The guide calls it the ultimate spiritual practice.
Yes, it frames it very practically. This is training for the single most important transition you'll ever make. And how you navigate it, it claims, affects what comes next, however you conceive that.
It mentions the bardos of dying from Tibetan Buddhism.
Right. These are stages the mind is said to go through during the dying process, dissolution of senses, elements, identity. The fascinating thing is, the guide says you can actually practice navigating these states while alive, through deep meditation, or even during sleep and dreaming.
Wow. And it offers a specific death meditation practice.
It does. It involves lying down, corpse pose, then systematically simulating the physical dissolution, feeling the body grow heavy, then dissolve into elements, then light, then space, then resting in that pure, deathless awareness that remains. And finally, resurrecting back into the body, but with the clear knowing that you are the awareness, not just the temporary form.
And ancestral communication, how does that fit? Is that like talking to ghosts?
It explains it less like superstition and more about recognizing that consciousness isn't strictly bound by physical form. So ancestors, guides, enlightened beings. Their consciousness patterns might still be accessible in subtler dimensions. Through deep meditation, dreams, or non-ordinary states, when the usual mental static quiets down. And then there's the core death secret. What you are cannot die because it was never born. The fear of death, it argues, is really the ego's fear of realizing its own temporary nature, its fear of discovering your true infinite self. Once you see that clearly, death just becomes natural, like falling asleep.
Yeah.
It suggests a daily death contemplation. Just remind yourself each morning, okay, I might die today. Not in a morbid, depressing way, but to cut through the trivial worries and bring sharp focus and appreciation to this moment, this life.
Powerful. Okay, next. The Chronos collapse. Time is the mind's grandest illusion.
Yeah, our minds are wired for linear time, right? Past, present, future. It's useful for getting things done, but the guide argues it's not the ultimate reality. Every single moment is actually a completely fresh creation.
So the past is just memory, the future just imagination.
Exactly. And the spiritual trap here is thinking enlightenment is in the future. That keeps you chasing it forever. It uses the temporal paradox idea comparing time to a flip book. Individual frames are static, but flip them fast enough, and you get smooth motion. Consciousness, it suggests, is the projector light, not the changing images on the film. And the eternal now isn't just a really long present moment. It's the absence of past and future. It's the infinite point where everything is created, where all possibilities exist right now. Quantum leaps in understanding often happen when that mental time structure just dissolves for a moment.
That's a big concept to grasp. How do we actually experience that when we're so stuck in linear thinking?
It offers the moment anchor practice. Pick something really simple, totally mundane like washing dishes. For just 5 minutes, put your entire attention on only that.
Okay.
Feel the warm water, the slippery soap, the sound of the plate, every tiny sensation. When your mind inevitably wanders off to yesterday's argument or tomorrow's worries, just gently notice it drifted, label it past or future, and bring your attention right back to the dish. No judgment.
Right.
Just observe the thought's time-bound nature and return to the anchor. With practice, the guide says, the gaps between thoughts get longer. You start to taste that pure presence, untainted by time. It throws in that Carl Jung quote here, too.
Which one?
There is no coming to consciousness without pain. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Ties back to the shadow work, you see?
Yeah, it all connects. Okay, penultimate section. The alchemist's fire. Reality being fluid, a malleable expression of consciousness.
Right. And this goes beyond simple positive thinking or basic manifestation. True alchemy, this perspective suggests, works at the level of the energetic blueprint of reality.
Energetic blueprint.
Yeah, the idea that every thought, feeling, belief carries a specific vibration. And your current reality is a direct reflection of your dominant vibration. So to change the outside, you have to change the inner frequency first.
Okay.
It also brings up the shadow of creation, unintended realities, meaning sometimes the stuff you don't want keeps showing up because it's actually manifesting your unintegrated fears, doubts, or self-sabotage patterns. So real alchemy requires dealing with that internal shadow stuff first.
Makes sense. So what are the practical steps for this art of conscious creation?
It boils down to 3 alchemical principles. First, intention, fire, having a clear desire charged with strong positive emotion. Second, attention, water, holding that intention in your awareness consistently without forcing it, just sustained focus. And third, detachment, air, letting go of how or when it has to happen, trusting the process.
Okay, fire, water, air.
Yeah. The alchemist's fire is that intense, focused awareness. It burns away the resistance, the old patterns, transmuting the lead of unconsciousness into the gold of consciously chosen reality. It suggests an alchemical resonance practice.
What's that involved?
Spending maybe 5-10 minutes daily, vividly imagining and, crucially, feeling the desired reality as if it's already here. Really embody that feeling state. Then, during the day, notice when contradicting thoughts or feelings arise, acknowledge them, and gently pivot back to the desired feeling.
But it warns about the narcissism of creation.
Yes, absolutely. Focusing only on getting stuff for yourself can become just another form of spiritual materialism. True alchemy, the guide insists, is ultimately about serving the evolution of all consciousness, not just padding your own nest.
Right. Okay, last one. Deep breath. The void's embrace. Non-existence is ultimate freedom, calling the void the ultimate frontier.
Yeah, this is maybe the most out there concept. It frames the void not as just empty space, but as the unmanifest ground of all being. The silence before the Big Bang, you could say. The source from which everything arises.
But it's a paradox, right? Emptiness that is fullness.
Exactly. The more you conceptually dissolve into that nothingness, the more you realize your inherent nature is that fullness, that potential for everything. The fear of non-existence, it argues, is the ego's last-ditch effort to survive.
It warns against the nihilistic trap, too.
Right. Misunderstanding the void as just meaninglessness or cosmic indifference. Instead, this view says the void shows that everything arises from this profound, intelligent emptiness, which actually makes everything sacred and deeply connected.
So, dissolving the self into the absolute sounds intense. What does that actually lead to? What's the experience?
It's described as self-realization, seeing that the separate I was always just a temporary pattern, like a wave on the ocean. When the wave dissolves, it doesn't cease to exist. It just realizes it is the ocean and always was. The result is described as boundless peace, infinite silence, and this deep sense of just, I am, but without needing an object to be something. It uses the metaphor of a cosmic black hole inside consciousness, not destructive, but the point where everything returns to source. Embracing this brings freedom of no thing.
Freedom of no thing.
Yeah, liberation from attachment to any particular form or identity. This allows for effortless action where you get out of the way and universal intelligence can flow through without interference.
Is there a practice for gazing into the void?
There is. The void gaze practice. You close your eyes, focus first on the space between your thoughts, the silence. Then shift awareness to the space behind your eyes, the felt sense of emptiness inside your head.
Okay.
Then let that sense of inner space expand outwards, encompassing the room, the city, the planet, the entire universe, until there's this vast, silent, empty awareness. The goal is to recognize that boundless space is what you fundamentally are, and just rest there, the void aware of itself.
Wow. Okay. We have covered some seriously radical ground here, digging into the paradox of becoming. From seeking as the block to embracing death, the shadow, the void. It really does challenge almost every standard spiritual idea.
Yeah.
It makes me reconsider, pretty much everything.
And that's exactly the point, isn't it? The guide, and hopefully this deep dive, they're pointers. Pointing beyond words, beyond concepts, to the direct recognition of what you are.
Right.
It keeps hammering home that core message. No method, practice, or understanding can give you what you already possess. The whole search ends not when you find something new, but when you recognize the seeker and the sought were never actually separate.
Makes you think of that old Zen saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water.
Yes.
After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water.
Exactly. And the key part often left out is the difference is not in the activity, but in the one who acts. So the invitation to you listening right now is to reflect on that. Based on your own direct experience, maybe even glimpses you've had listening today. What is the difference in the one who acts for you?